Every year, innocent people are sent to prison for crimes they didn't commit, locked away and forgotten. On this channel, we break down wrongful convictions, case by case, exposing where the system failed and asking the hard question, how does this keep happening? Today we're looking at one of the most shocking miscarriages of justice in UK legal history. It's the case of Andrew Malkinson, who lost 17 years of his life for a crime he did not commit. It was the early years of July 19, 2003, when a young woman, who the court later referred to as C, was brutally attacked on her way home. What happened to her was horrific. She was raped, violently assaulted, and left with deep scars. The police needed a suspect, and months later they found one in Andrew Malkinson. Now, Andrew wasn't some shadowy figure lurking in the night. He was an ordinary man living an ordinary life and no history of violence. He had no connection to the victim. Andrew was convicted on 2 counts of rape and 1 of attempted strangulation with an intent to rape. The sentence he received, life imprisonment. Andrew faced an impossible choice because in the UK justice system, admitting guilt is often the only path to parole. But Andrew refused to confess to a crime he simply did not commit, and that decision would keep him locked away for nearly 2 decades. And this is the part that should make us all stop and think. Andrew spent 17 years behind bars. 17 years. That's not just a number on a calendar. That's a lifetime stolen. Birthdays, graduations, even funerals he never got to attend. While his friends and families moved on with their life, Andrew was locked away for something he did not do. Before we go into any details, I want to pause for a moment. What happened to the survivor in this case is deeply distressing. I'll outline the facts very briefly, but if you prefer, skip ahead to the next timestamp and you can join when you're ready. Here's what we know. Victim C was attacked from behind and dragged into a secluded area. She didn't know her attacker, but she was later able to give the police a reasonable description. The attacker told her to throw her phone away. He took off his shirt. He pinned her to the ground and then began choking her. She begged him to stop. He didn't. In trying to fight back, she believes she scratched his face, but eventually she lost consciousness, and while she was unconscious, she was raped both vaginally and anally. Her injuries were severe. One of the most shocking injuries that she sustained was a partially severed nipple, and that was consistent with a bite. The police surgeon later documented multiple wounds, including abrasions and broken fingernails. Forensic samples were taken from both her hands. And then, years later, came a turning point. Andrew's legal team pushed for new forensic testing, and when the test results came back, they were undeniable. Andrew's DNA was nowhere to be found, but the DNA they did find potentially pointed to someone else, and it's the man that the court documents refer to as Mr. B. Here's what made this discovery so damning. Mr. B lived nearby, and he matched the victim's description more closely. He had no alibi. He had prior convictions for violence, yet he was never considered a prime suspect. This breakthrough with the DNA was only possible because of the advances in DNA profiling, and this profiling didn't exist when Andrew was convicted. And so with that in mind, the Court of Appeal turned to consider the second, rather pointed arguments made from the defence, that evidence had been withheld at the first trial. If the DNA evidence was a scientific bombshell, what came next was a scandal. During the assault, the victim fought back desperately. She testified that she scratched her attacker's face and broke a nail on her left hand while defending herself. Now remember that, because this is a crucial point. But here's where things went wrong at trial. The prosecution's expert witness, Dr. Anderson, told the court the damage was actually on her right hand, not on the left, as the victim had claimed. Specifically, he stated the right middle finger was broken. His statement at trial was accepted as agreed evidence, meaning Andrew's defence team never had an opportunity to challenge or even cross-examine him. But there's just one problem here, because the police photos taken after the attack show her right hand clearly. The ring, middle and little fingers, all the nails appeared undamaged and equal in length and in perfect condition. The right middle finger Dr. Anderson claimed was broken. It looked absolutely fine. The issue is these photos were never given to Andrew's defence team. Think about what that means for a minute, because it's absolutely crucial evidence. The judge told the jury when instructing them, if you believe she scratched her attacker, you must acquit, meaning you must acquit Andrew Malkinson. And Andrew had no facial injuries, but the jury was never shown these photos that proved the prosecution expert was wrong. So Andrew's lawyers never got the chance. They couldn't show the contradiction, they couldn't question the expert's credibility, and they couldn't present what might have happened. And that was Andrew's strongest defence at the first trial. The Court of Appeal later called the failure to disclose highly material. By not presenting this evidence, the jury may have been misled, and this consequently may have sealed Andrew's fate. One photograph, one disclosure failure resulted in nearly 17 years or 2 decades of stolen freedom. The third revelation struck at the heart of the witnesses' credibility. The prosecution case leaned heavily on 2 eyewitnesses, Beverly Craig and Michael Seward. Their testimony certainly helped put Andrew behind bars. But what the jury never heard was both Craig and Seward had criminal records for dishonesty. The defence was never given this information, and if they had, it would have cast doubt on whether Craig or Seward were credible, civil-minded citizens that the prosecution portrayed them to be. That's a serious omission. These 3 grounds, the DNA evidence pointing to another suspect, the hidden photographs that could have cleared Andrew, and the concealed criminal histories of key witnesses, were devastating to the prosecution's case in the appeal. But Andrew's legal team had raised 2 further issues that deserved consideration. The defence team came back and argued that the eyewitness might have had an ulterior motive for their testimony, and yes, the timeline does seem a little strange. Seward had waited 6 months before making a final ID of Andrew. He had already seen Andrew's image before IDing him, and that ID just happened to line up with his own criminal charges. Coincidence? Well, the defence said yes, but the Court of Appeal said maybe, but not enough to prove anything. They called it speculation, not evidence, and just like that, they dismissed this particular ground of appeal. The defence also argued that Michael Seward's long-term heroin use could have affected his memory, making his testimony unreliable. They even brought in an expert witness, but the court wasn't having it. The expert could only speak in general terms, not specifically about Seward's memory at the time. So there's no direct link, no solid evidence, and once again it was dismissed by the Court of Appeal. However, while the Court of Appeal acknowledged these concerns, they found them insufficient. Without concrete evidence of police coercion or specific proof that the drug use impaired Seward's memory on that particular night, speculation alone could not overturn a conviction. But grounds 1, 2 and 3, these were devastating to the prosecution's case. DNA that pointed to someone else, photos that were never disclosed, and witnesses with criminal records hidden from the defence. Andrew Malkinson walked out of prison after 17 years behind bars, but freedom doesn't erase those stolen years for him. It doesn't give him back the life events he missed or the people he lost along the way. Andrew didn't just survive prison, he survived a system that seemed determined to ignore the truth. A system that withheld evidence, relied upon unreliable witnesses, and clung to its mistakes for nearly 2 decades. For the survivor, C, of this horrific crime, justice was delayed too. The real perpetrator, Mr. B, remained free, while Andrew sat in a cell. That means 2 lives, the survivor, C, and Andrew's life, were shattered by the same failure. The real perpetrator walked free, one innocent man rotted in prison. How many other victims like this had there been? How many other Andrew Malkinsons are sitting in cells right now? So what do we take away from this? Well, wrongful convictions aren't just statistics, they're human tragedies. They destroy families, erode public trust, and let real offenders walk free. And it shows us something sobering. If it can happen to Andrew Malkinson, it can happen to anyone. Until the system changes, none of us are truly safe. If this story moved you, please share it. The more we talk about cases like this, the harder it becomes to ignore the systemic failures that put innocent people behind bars. Help us make these stories heard. For now, take care.